Gamers all around the world, welcome to another edition of B.A.S. Select Start.
B.A.S.S.
That voice can only mean one thing. Dan, how we doing?
Great, doing great. Craving chocolate, but it's one of those days.
Sexual chocolate?
No, not exactly, no.
Well, personally,
hope you're doing well out there, though, Mark.
Yeah, hope everybody on a serious note is doing well. And I'm talking about everybody that's in and out of the WWE. During these times of the coronavirus, we hope that everybody is staying home and staying safe. And we are trying to do as much content as we can, not only for BA Select Start, but for our other podcast as well, the Anything Wrestling podcast, which is also on the same channel, and they're on separate playlists, so you can go through those. But speaking of which, so Dan and myself actually on the last episode, we got the 49 things that were the most requested on the 2K forums for the next rendition of the WWE game. And last time we got through the first 10 items, and here we are, we're going to go through the next 15 items and just give our thoughts of what we think, if we are in agreement with everybody else who wanted these things, and just where we stand on it. So, Dan, shall we begin?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as this list continues, we're going to start to get into nitpicking territory, because I haven't actually seen the entire list, so...
Okay, yeah, and I feel like some things are a little bit of a repeat, just like different wording. So,
yeah. Well, kind of like how we talked last time, how there's a little bit of crossover between like the universe mode and the GM mode thing.
Yeah, and I personally think on that note, I think that if they put in the GM mode, they're most likely probably gonna get rid of universe mode. I mean, because if there's a GM mode, what's the point of having a universe mode?
I agree.
So
but let's jump into number 11.
Let's do it. So number 11 here we have independent commentary team.
I don't understand what that one meant.
If I could take an educated guess, I think what everybody wants is, depending on what arena you're in. So, for example, if you select the Raw arena, you get Byron, Tom, and I'm just saying, for example, Samoa Joe. And then if you shift over to a Friday Night SmackDown arena, you get Michael Cole and Corey Graves. So basically, different commentators for
utilizing all the commentary teams as opposed to just having the
same
three guys call every single match.
Right. Yes.
I could get on board with that. I'm not sure how that's gonna affect anything logistically as far as like the game recognizing the difference, but
yeah,
I mean it might be a nice touch, and it'll give it a little bit of variance from time to time. Obviously, you can't exactly do like I don't know, like legend commentary teams, because a lot of them are dead. But yeah, mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. First of all, I think that it's going to take a lot of recording sessions if they do decide to do that, because there are some people who have never have recorded commentary for a WWE game, like for example Tom Phillips and all those guys.
Beth.
Yeah, Beth, exactly, or Mauro Ranallo. But I think what would be neat is that you could also take this and sort of incorporate it into other things, such as maybe create an arena. When you create an arena, maybe one of the finalizing options is, who do you want
selecting your commentaries
exactly for that particular arena. Yeah, again, I think it's going to take a lot of pre-production work, because you have to get all those guys scheduled and have them come in and record, and especially if this coronavirus is any consolation, they're probably not going to be able to do that soon, or they might have to do it like individually, putting everybody in the booth. But if we can speak on commentary for just one more second, I would like to see the commentary sort of get revamped, because I feel like we're still getting a lot of generic and sort of no emotion commentary. Like for
Yeah, very very canned, very repetitious.
Yeah, I mean, in 2K19, I know there were some key moments where, let's say, I'm using this is the only example that comes to mind right now. So, if you play as Goldberg and you do the jackhammer and you're at that point in the move where Goldberg lifts you up, Byron starts pacing his commentary where he goes, "Here we go, we're gonna see it, we're gonna see it, we're gonna see the," and then he waits for you to actually hit the move and he goes, "Jackhammer." So I would like for a little bit more of that to be incorporated as opposed to, oh, he hit his finisher. That could be the end of the match. It's,
Yeah,
you
break
know,
away from the genericness.
yeah, just put a little bit more emotion behind it and just sort of revamp and get rid of those generic statements.
Yeah,
Um, with that, this second one, I think I know what it means, but not entirely too sure. AI upgrade. Um, I think this
I
is
mean they're probably just talking improving the computer players, so that they're either better or more intuitive, or there's actual variance based on your difficulty.
Yeah, because I will say there are some moments where the computer just acts like a mannequin, where it starts kicking your butt, but then for whatever reason, when you're on the ground, I think it feels sorry for you and it just backs off and doesn't do
It
anything.
just stops.
Yeah, it just waits for it. It basically begs for you to get up and hit your finisher and end the match. Um, but no, I mean not too many complaints here. I mean I know 2K20 was a mess, but I think if you go back to 2K19, the AI wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean your sentiments.
Uh, this one's less of a personal concern of mine. I mean, you always want tweaks and improvements to take place. So if they go back in and they rework the AI to where it seems more intuitive or more fluid, or like you said, if it's kind of a combination of things at that point. Like I brought up getting rid of the default reversal thing. If you get rid of the reversal thing, but then you have an improved AI where you actually just naturally have a back and forth with it, I think that's going to give a better gameplay experience.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. Um, third item that we have here is create a finisher. I don't know how much you dabbled into this back in the day when it was still a part of the games religiously, but
I did my fair share. Some of it was fine, and some of it was real wonky.
yeah, I felt like you can either create something that looks realistic or something that just looks completely satire.
Yeah,
Um, I will say this though, there was a sort of a glitch for creative finisher. The fact that it wouldn't do any damage. Um, I think it was WWE 13 or might have been 2K14, I forget which one, where essentially you would hit your finisher, but it really wouldn't get processed as a finishing move. It was just something that literally did no damage. So, for example, let's say if you had three finishers, and your opponent is at yellow health, you could hit the finisher two or three times back to back, and your opponent's body would not turn to orange or red. It would stay at yellow. And that was an indicator to me that, oh, you hit the finisher, but there really is no effect.
yeah. It was basically like being no sold.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
So I don't know if maybe yeah, I don't know what the deal is, but again, if they do bring back this feature, which I'd be okay with, like again, I know last time we were talking about certain things like custom music. If
yeah.
we can once again get a custom finisher for a superstar, I think it gives a little bit more originality as opposed to going and choosing a stunner or a rock bottom or a sweet chin music, to
Or a
implement.
flatliner in my case.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I gotta be honest with you, I don't mind giving my wrestlers like generic moves sometimes because I like that how back in the day finishing moves used to be so simple. So,
Mm-hmm.
in that regard, it's fine, but if we can get the option to like put moves together, I mean, it's
Yeah,
one
put a
more,
little tweak on it.
yeah, one more way of giving power to the player, essentially.
My only critique with that, and this was something that I would run into, is like there were weird things that you could do in the original one that just derailed the flow of the match. And so, I mean, not to say that you had to do it, but you could do it. And so I think that if they come back with it, they've got to improve things like if they're going to do the diving finisher.
Yeah.
That got weird because you could do like a front flip and then convert into a back flip and then hit your finisher, and it was the silliest looking thing ever.
Yeah.
And then in the standing finisher, you could shift them to like 4 different like holding positions before finally picking a conclusion. So like you put them in like a power bomb move, flip them up into a Samoan drop, put them up into a suplex, put them back into the Samoan drop, set them back down and into a choke slam position, and then hit a choke slam.
Yeah.
And you're like, why would you let me do that? Why is any of that necessary?
Yeah, I think you're more like me when it comes to stuff like this, where there's that wall of reality that you want the match to follow. So you could be having this, epic match, and all of a sudden you're going against someone who has a custom finisher. It would kind of take you out of it, So, but no, yeah, it would get weird sometimes, like especially when they incorporated like diving custom finishers. You would go from like a moonsault to a phoenix splash to and I don't know what, and it would all just look very wonky and glitchy and weird. But I suppose that's a part of having some fun. It's like, again, when you give the player options, you can either create something very realistic, or you could create something that's very goofy.
Yeah, my only other thought is that if they do go back to this, they need to create a back finisher, because they only did front facing and diving before.
Yeah.
I think. Did they ever do a from behind finisher?
No, but there was a motion that you could select where you would go from the front to the back of your opponent. Like you would do like an arm wrench, and then you would go behind them, and then you could, do something there.
Yeah, it would let you do like a pump handle slam or something.
Yeah, exactly. But no, yeah, that's a very good new thing to implement. I wouldn't even mind ground finishers, like like if they gave you like the base of like a people's elbow, where you could do a taunt, or you could swing off the ropes, and then you can maybe like jump and land on your feet and do something comical, or hit a move that's never been seen before. I would also like to see that as well.
If you could create your own people's elbow, that'd be pretty rad.
Yeah, you could have variations of it. So yeah. Next one here, we have improved physics. What do you take from this, Dan?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing that stands out to me is obviously things from this past game, where like you had the weird hair going on, and you had my belt that I told you always had the ghost trail on it.
Yeah.
Things like that just kind of, they're not, like, it's not realistic, and it looks weird. I think that they're probably looking for, like, believable lifts and slams and hair, and I think hair's been a big one for a long time.
Yeah.
Because people just want the hair to flow like hair.
Yeah. I brought this up towards the beginning of the series. First of all, yes, I think that hair and facial hair, especially for someone like a Bray Wyatt, or what's his name from the War Raiders, who's got the long beard?
Ivar.
Ivar, yeah. I was gonna say Hanson, but I remembered that's his old name. So first of all, I would like to see improved physics in that sense, but not in just the sense of the hair flowing or going back and forth. I think I brought this up. One very neat idea is the whole thing of making it look like your wrestler has gone through a grueling match. Where, for example, I'm going to pick an example here. Let's say Sheamus. If he has his faux hawk, and let's say you're at the beginning of the match, that faux hawk is in place, it's straight, and it's all gelled up, ready to go. and then maybe by the end of the match it's a little slanted or it's a little messed up, and it's not in place anymore. Or
And with him being as white as he is, if you see a little bit of a shift to where he's a little red,
yeah,
nice touch.
that was gonna be my second point, is having certain things in the match deteriorate. For example, your wrestler being bruised up, or if they're wearing wrist tape, maybe if they went through a grueling match, maybe parts of the wrist tape start coming off, or if you're someone who's playing in a tank top, maybe the tank top gets wrinkled and sweaty and gets maybe a little bit filthy. Implementing stuff like that where it makes you feel like you just went through a brutal match, because I can't tell you how many times where and this also happened in 2K19. I think it was a glitch that never got fixed, where you'd be busted open, your chest would be bleeding, your forehead would be bleeding, and then when you would go into a victory scene, the blood would reset, and then it would start dripping all over your face again. So that consistency, I think, needs to be there, like of having a brutal match and feeling like you were in a brutal match.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, whatever 2K20 got wrong, fix that in regards to physics pronto. Next, well, I think this is kind of in regards to what we just said, but it says hair and cloth upgrade. I think this overlaps with what we talked about the other time, where we said having certain articles of clothing being tucked in or out, and also the movement of your clothing, to where, like, let's say if I'm a Johnson and I'm wearing those jean shorts, that if I'm walking around, those jean shorts are moving around. They're not just stationary and frozen in place.
Well, my take on it is it might be as simple as the tuck in, tuck out thing. It could be we want more options. It might be we want the suite going around that stuff to be more involved. Because, like, for hair, I feel like the available hairs are still pretty limited. And there's not a ton of customizability. I know that they added in the hair dye thing, which is fine. Yeah. I utilized that in one of my characters. But I feel like, again, on the default superstars, let me modify their hair if I want to. If you give me the 3D model thing that I talked about.
Yeah.
If you give me an option where, like, there's a spiky hair or something, and I can go in and there's articulation points that they predetermine even on the hair, that then, like, if the spike goes to the left, I can move it to the right, or I can make it shorter, things like that.
Yes.
I think that would be a nice touch to give more freedom and more creativity within that context too.
Yeah, essentially having options and options.
Yeah, instead of saying, well, you get this, enjoy, but this doesn't look like me.
Yeah. Especially, like, if somebody hasn't made it in the game and you're trying to create them, like a new NXT talent, and you find a hair model and you're like, oh, this is so darn close, but there's this one part of the hairstyle that looks off. Just having the ability to go in there and customize it to how you like. I also know that there was a method that came out probably about a year and a half ago, where you would be able to, through glitching, you would be able to combine two different hairstyles. Which I think that if they implemented that, like, let's say if one half of your head is long and the other half is short, or it's shaved, that you could have all those options of how far, like, you want the hair to be long, or where do you want the hair to be shaved and where do you want it to be long, type of a thing. So just having options within options. And I think last time you brought up a note saying that clothing options were very limited, shirt options were very limited. Indeed they are. I, for example, I forget who I was trying to create, and I realized that there's no options for ties. For guys, if I have, like, a button-up shirt and I want to put a tie in there, or a bow tie, there's no options for that. There's none in the game.
You either had to find a shirt that came with one, or I know they used to have a single tie available in the like, neck decorations. Yeah. And you couldn't even change much on it. It was like a short little tie, and that was it.
Exactly. And I mean, when you think about games back in the day like Shut Your Mouth, where they had that, they had ties and bow ties and hair length and stuff of that nature. So once again, a lot of these things have been done before. It's just a case of bringing them back. Next one that we have here, very interesting one. Road to WrestleMania. I'm guessing they mean Return of Road to WrestleMania, but
That was the whole name, was Road to WrestleMania?
yeah, Road to WrestleMania. Um, I'm not gonna lie, Road to WrestleMania was actually fun. I remember all those custom storylines that you had to play through, which would take place from January 1st to WrestleMania. Um, the fact that they were short and it had a branching option and it wasn't too complex, but it was still fun to play and it was all original content. It wasn't stuff that we had already seen on TV. So,
Yeah.
what did you think of this mode back in the day?
I think that it was a good mode. I enjoyed it, and I thought that it gave a little bit of flavor to the game. I know you had most of the time it was you played as a specific superstar and went through whatever story there was.
Yeah.
And then there was the one. Was it the John Cena one where you play as a custom character, or was it a?
There was an Undertaker storyline where you could either choose from a few different characters or you could put your custom character in.
Yeah, because that was essentially going after the streak, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, things like that make it's like you said, it's little short form stories, and that gives you that little bit of variance instead of being forced to commit to one story that takes 30 hours of gameplay to burn through, and then you can't play it again. But I know it's a pipe dream, but I wouldn't even be upset if there was a full out My Career mode and a Road to WrestleMania, so you had little sub stories and the primary story. But,
yeah. Again, I don't like, because right now at this point in the list, we're very heavy when it comes to game modes. Like, for example, we've already had GM mode talked about. We've had Create a Story talked about. Now we're talking about Road to WrestleMania. So that's already jam-packed, but I mean, again, if the whole philosophy here is to give something to the consumer that's gonna do way better than 2K20, I personally think you have to. You have to have all these modes implemented in the game.
yeah, and I also feel like the Road to WrestleMania thing almost lends itself to that idea of the ongoing updates. Because if you, in the course of the year or the 2 years, have a handful of extra ones, like set up for future release, then you can put those as part of a DLC pack or individual purchase, or have those be the thing, like have everything else be paid, and then those little stories are free.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I think that's a good customer business model, is if you throw a little something at them, where it's just free to play beyond what they've already paid.
Yeah.
Even if you then also have additional things that you can purchase. But like if you're like, hey, here's something new for free, and here's a downloadable pack that you can buy for $10 if you want, but it then makes the people who are not paying you extra money still feel valued.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you release 4 at release, and then you've got 4 more that you release over time as just little tidbits, I think that'd be really cool too.
Yeah, especially because right now they're at a make or break period. I mean, if they were rolling out with these games and it was one good game after another, I would say, you know what, I wouldn't mind paying for extra content. But because now we're going off of such a debacle from what was 2K20, I'd say that their business model should be, let's give them a game at a good price, but then also throw a bone their way even after release or even after they've paid for the game.
Yeah.
So, with that said, next one here. Again, this is very vague. I don't know what this exactly entails. Superstar attire. This is a big one for me, and I know for you, Dan, because we've easily spent so much time talking about this. And again, I don't know specifically where this is pointing to, but I often run into an issue where, let's say, if I'm giving someone a custom attire, um, this might be nitpicking, but I feel like having only two slots is not enough. I wouldn't mind if each superstar got three slots, maybe, like kind of how we had back in the day. Um, or if that's not what this is pointing to, superstar attires, again, going back to the whole thing of not having duplicates, but having one superstar with multiple attires, that's a big one for me. But what do you got for this one?
My interpretation of this one is mostly that I suspect they might be referring to the idea of having, like we talked about with the Becky Lynch. Oh, look, Becky came out with that SmackDown shirt. Maybe she should have that now. um, because I mean, you can. I think we've established you can go in and you can change the clothing
Yeah.
of the superstars already, but you can't modify hair, making, and then the fact that you're limited to just two attires per thing, and then if you copy the superstar, then you still can't change the hair, but you can change the clothes. But then you've got two superstars.
Yeah.
I think that leans a little bit into what you're talking about, which is maybe having more than two slots.
Yeah.
In a way, so that then it's all enveloped into one person instead of, okay, well, I've got four versions with two outfits each, so I have 8 attires for this superstar, because that's when it starts to get clunky.
Yeah. A small thing that I also mentioned a while back was also makeup options for all the female wrestlers. For example, you would have someone like Paige, who by default she has black lipstick. And you know what? Maybe I want to give her red lipstick, or maybe I want to give her no lipstick. I wouldn't mind if there were options for that as well. Because I know with the guys, it's like they don't have makeup, but they have beards, so you can alter beards. Um, with the ladies, obviously no facial hair, but then there's the whole thing with the makeup. So again, I would just say like having options, allowing for uh, each custom superstar attire to be different. Um, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So again, this one is generic, but I think I know what it's pointing to. It says Creation Suite. I think this is referring to either one of two things: either bringing back all the creation suites that they have taken out, or implementing new creation suites. So, but I think we're probably pointing more towards the first one, like we talked about earlier. Create a finisher coming back, create a story coming back. Trying to think, what else did they take out? Um, just bringing back all these features that for whatever reason they took out. Um, so where are you on this one?
This one was just generically creation suites.
Yeah, it just says Creation Suite. I'm thinking how they narrowed down this list is that if something falls into the category of Creation Suite, they just put it in there. Because maybe someone talked about, oh, improve this in the Create a Superstar Suite. Maybe someone said, improve this in the Create an Arena Suite. So they got those two together and they lumped it into just Creation Suite. So I don't know what this entails, but if you have any comments about Creation Suite, maybe something that you want to see return, or maybe a complete new Creation Suite, what would it be?
Yeah, it's probably referring predominantly to like a revamp of the whole thing, but also like we had talked about previously, was when you put something into the game, why take it out? You've dedicated that time, so why would you put in a creation suite for create a finisher and then just remove it. And I know that I think when was the last time that was in? Do you remember?
For which one?
The finisher. When was the last time that was actually in the game?
2K14.
Okay, so 2K. 2K14 was the pickup game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if maybe they didn't get the like files for that creation suite when they took over. But if it's already in there, it should be a thing that just kind of you expand, you elaborate, you don't downsize. Because we got with this one essentially a bare bones game. Granted, it still had career mode and it still had the originals in there, but it was just sort of straight laced, and I don't see why you would remove it. So revamping and adding back in the modes that used to be there because you already have the skeleton for them.
Yeah, two quick things that I'm gonna add in. Number one is I heard this somewhere, and I don't know if there's any validity to it, but I heard that when THQ had all these features in there, that apparently 2K had to pay for all these features to stay in the game. So I don't know if maybe it came down to budget and they said, you know what, let's not pay for this feature, let's not pay for that feature, and maybe that's why a lot of these match types and creation suites got removed. I don't know if there's any validity to that.
Yeah.
But the second thing that I wanted to say is maybe seeing a new creation suite. I know how last time you were talking about doing the corporate Money in the Bank ladder match. I wouldn't mind if you would be able to design your own backstage area. So like you pick like an office or a room or a parking lot, and then you can customize what cars you want in there or what items you want or what weapons you want in there. I think that would be a really neat feature.
Yeah, that would be fun. Or if you implement the corporate Money in the Bank, let me design the building. Like give me a blank building, because I imagine you wouldn't do too many rooms. It would probably be like 4 rooms.
Yeah.
And let me design my 4 rooms that I fight through.
Yeah, and again, I want to rephrase by saying, don't, like, I wouldn't want it to be, okay, there's this room, there's some decors or whatever in there, and you have a choice of 4 weapons that you can add, like, on the ground, and you could put them in there. No, you need like an extensive creation suite. I don't want just 3 generic items and then you say, "Oh, this is your own creative backstage area." No. Like I'm talking options with options.
Yeah, I get to pick what chairs and where and what sort of lockers I want and how, not necessarily how they interact, because at that point they're probably going to be default reactions, but
Yeah.
Yeah, leave little cubbies that then I can either fill with equipment or weapons or shower rooms or things like that. But
yeah.
So it was one of the Snapdown games where they had a shower where you could throw somebody into it and they'd go in, get sprayed in the face with hot water, and come out like, "Oh God, my face!"
Yeah, it was a Here Comes the Pain.
That was silly, but I liked it.
And there was a Trish Stratus poster like right on the wall.
Yeah, which seems totally normal when you're traveling from city to city, that you would put up posters of the wrestlers.
Yeah, in a public showering place. Next one we got here, and I know last time when we were talking about more WWE legends, you brought up a comment and you said we didn't get a chance to really address females. But this next option here says more female superstars. No, Mr.
I mean, that's even...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's even something that I run into with Supercard, which is still technically something run by 2K. Because you have, and I know this is slightly off topic, but in Supercard you've got the various tiers, and there's the male cards and the female cards.
Yeah, I know last time you were asking me who was removed from, who was in 2K19 but then was removed in 2K20. I know that Alundra Blaze was removed. Trying to think, Jacqueline, Ivory were all removed. And I don't understand why. And going back to your point, we've been in so many eras, and you want to talk about women's revolution. I think that one way that you can almost help that revolution grow is implementing change in the WWE games as well, by not just having, like, I mean, really, when you consider, you would have, like, I don't know, in 2K19, I think there was ballpark around 18 female superstars. That's not counting any DLC, but there was about 18 female superstars. I think there was maybe one or two duplicates, so give or take 16. Um, and it seems like it's like we've been through all these eras, and we've been through all, so many female wrestlers. I don't get why we can't have, like, for example, this came out of nowhere. And this kind of goes to show that, hey, they can do it. It's just a case of if they choose to. In 2K20, without any announcement, without any forewarning, Molly Holly was just added in the game. Like, no build-up, no surprise. It's just when the gameplay came out, it's like, oh, well, wait, Molly Holly? She's in the game? And I think that's essentially what you need to do. I've noticed that with the last two games, they've been experimenting with that. Where, for example, in 2K19, this is kind of not the same thing, but in 2K19, instead of giving you modern day Edge, they gave you rated R Superstar Edge. Instead of giving you Booker T, they gave you King Booker. And it seems like now they're taking that to the next step of, you know what, without asking for anybody to purchase DLC expandable superstars, let's just throw Molly Holly in the game, because why not? And I would love to see that mentality for the next rendition, is throw superstars in there. Like, I know now China wouldn't be a problem because she was in DLC for 2K20. All these Attitude Era superstars, put them in there. I know you can't do everybody because there are some superstars who are under contract in different wrestling promotions. But going back to your point, when they advertise, 100, 200 some odd wrestlers, and only 20 of them barely is female wrestlers, it's like, that's not really giving us a whole lot of options for female wrestlers.
Yeah, and to their credit, for this past year, going through I'll say specifically this last 2K Originals, the hacker one.
Yeah.
You unlock a bunch of females, but they're just variations on females that are already in the game.
Exactly.
Like, you get Chairman Alexa Bliss and Alexa Bliss and the robot Nia Jax, and then you get Antivirus Carmella and Tamina. And you're like, okay, great. But what about other superstars that I grew up with that I love? Like, I'm just going to throw names out. I don't know any of the legal repercussions of some of them, but the China, Lita, Trish, Jacqueline, Ivory, Jazz, Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler, who else was I thinking of? Shit, who cares if she didn't really wrestle? Throw Miss Elizabeth in there. Sensational Sherry, and anybody. Like, grab any. There's so many names that we haven't even explored. Molly Holly, Mighty Molly.
Yeah.
Put them in there. Who'd you say, Sable?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dawn Marie, Candice Michelle.
Victoria.
Maybe not Dawn Marie, but
yeah, so I mean, again, variation.
And sorry, that was just all old names, but like, did we get Tony in this one, Tony Storm?
Yeah, we got her in 2K20. Yeah.
Okay, so but then you've got Kaylee Ray, you've got Perazzo, you had and like you said, some of them are out. Like Priscilla, I think Priscilla Kelly was in the Mae Young Classic, but then she's off doing indie stuff.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't necessarily work. But there's tons of people.
Yeah. Again, variation, variety. Um, I get it. You're right. Yes, there's far more male talent in wrestling than there is female. That's just the fact of life. But doesn't mean that we can't incorporate. Like for example, Tori Wilson just got inducted last year into the Hall of Fame. So, and she's not in any other wrestling promotion. So we can have her in there. I don't see why that would be a problem. Um, just all these female wrestlers from yesteryear, I think should be in the game. Why not? Um, and I think if I'm gonna go back for just 1 second to it, and I know I may be annoying you by constantly going back to it, but I think that's what made 2K14 work, is that you had multiple generations of talent, whether that's male and female, and you did have Miss Elizabeth in the game as in a managerial role. You did have Stephanie McMahon and AJ and Trish, Lita, and all these competitors from back in the day, or even at the time currently on the roster. So to have that variety, I think is a plus personally for the next rendition of the WWE game.
Yeah.
Next one we got here, and I have addressed this multiple times, and I'm glad that it's actually on here. 2K19 control scheme. Um, I'll throw it out there. I got used to the new controllers for 2K20, um, but I just personally felt like it wasn't clicking. I talked about it before, doing the generic thing of activating your comeback and then trying to perform it. I would have to press 6 buttons to get that thing under a way. Um, and again, I understand that 2K, I mean, to be very honest here for a second, I think they were updating the controller scheme for 2K20 to market it as like a new game. But I think that if they are still hell bent on keeping that controller scheme, that's fine. But once again, and I know you talked about this, Dan, options, options, options. Give us the option to go back to the old controller as well. Um, and I don't care if by default if it's the 2K20 controller scheme, as long as I have the option of going back to the 2K19 controller scheme. Um, and I understand that once every 6 or 7 games they want to change the controllers around just to uh, evolve with the times, but not when you find it to be an inconvenience. That's just my opinion. But what do you think about this?
I again, like you said, it took a little getting used to, but you make the adjustment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the more intuitive controller scheme. Like, I don't like this whole needing to hit 2 buttons thing
Yeah.
to do everything. Especially because they're awkward buttons. Like, if it was pull 2 trigger buttons, like I think it used to be L2 R2.
Yeah.
That made sense because it was a one finger on each hand. But if I need to try and the number of times that I've had to readjust both hands so that I could use my index finger and middle finger on my right hand to hit square triangle,
Yeah.
it's unacceptable. So, yeah, I would roll it back or find a more intuitive thing because I know we've said it 15 times while talking about this. If it's not broken, don't fix it. There's nothing wrong with it. Leave it alone.
Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, my sentiments exactly. Or if it kills them to keep this in there, that's fine, but at least give us the option to switch back. So,
Yeah.
next one here, I've talked about this before. Blood. Blood in WWE games. Um, Going back to SmackDown versus Raw 2010, I believe. Blood was a very instrumental thing in all the matches because it wasn't just when you bust somebody open that the blood just goes on their head and chest. The physics of the game was that when you bust somebody open, if your fist comes in contact with their face while their head is busted open, then the blood smears off on your knuckles, and then it drips down to their chest, and sometimes even on arms and legs. And there would be moments where the blood would spill on the ring mat, and then it would fade, but then you would have another spot, another blood spot, and then that would fade, and then so on and so forth. But again, I think that I can tie blood into physics, and I understand that now the product is PG and they want to look out for kids or whatever. I don't know if this would sound too hokey, but maybe have like a parent, like when you have to put like a 4-digit passcode so that kids don't.
Yeah, like parental controls.
Parental controls, yeah, that one. If the consumers, parents, are so concerned about their child seeing blood, even though we live in the generation of YouTube where everything is accessible, um, I would say have that on there. Have a parental control on there. Hey, I don't want my son or daughter seeing too much blood in a game. Okay, turn it off and put a 4-digit passcode, and there you go. So that way, if someone is over 18 and they are okay with blood, they can turn it on, and you can have that full realistic effect of the blood dripping and whatnot. So I don't know. That's my opinion of how to handle things. But what do you think?
What's the specific category on this one?
It just says blood.
Okay. As for me, I mean, yeah, it's always been more of an aesthetic or atmospheric thing than a necessity. Because I know that they used to have the games where you'd get hit, there'd be the flash of light. Now, oh god, my face.
Yeah.
And then there were a handful of games in the middle where there was no blood. Is it necessary, especially in this new climate where we don't see the bleeding very often? Not necessarily, but is it a nice little thing to have in there for effect? Yeah, because these people are still going through grueling fights, grueling matches, sometimes taking hard hits, and sometimes they get busted open the hard way,
yeah.
as the phrase goes. I would even maybe I'd even have it be sort of like a pseudo Easter egg thing, where the only way you can get to it is if you actually go through and you just beat the bloody hell out of the opponent. And so, like, once their head gets silver, then you have the option to make them bleed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't see a specific reason why to not have it in there, because bleeding. It's one of those lore things, because bleeding has been so ingrained in the history of professional wrestling. You've got those iconic moments of Steve Austin in the sharpshooter, and anytime Ric Flair bleeds. Just put it in there. It's a small detail, and again, if you want to put it behind a wall, like you have to go above and beyond to beat the shit out of the guy, go for it. But yeah, why not?
Yeah, agreed. Next thing that we got here, and this has been requested so many times and goes without speaking or saying, special guest referee.
Yeah, which calls back to the match types that we talked about last time.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. I was never really one to fight for this mode, or for this match type. If it's there, like, I would be like, okay, cool. Like, I don't mind going in there and sometimes being a goody two shoes and calling it right down the middle, or maybe sometimes I would wait for an excuse for someone to attack me, and then I would, if I was Steve Austin, I would give them a Stone Cold Stunner and the match would end. But if this is in there, great. Once again, nothing wrong with having options. It's always a good thing. I just think that, once again, they need to repackage this match, because I know that the last time that we had it, you had a meter, and if you broke the rules too many times, someone would come out of an authority figure and go, you're not doing such a good job. We're gonna bring out a second referee. You're kicked out of the match.
But this is my game. Let me do what I want.
And again, here's the thing. Options, options, options. Maybe you can have that in there, but it's an option. Hey, do you want to have a meter to where you might get kicked out, or do you want it to be, free play? You can screw the guy how many times you want. You're still the guest referee of the match. So,
Yeah.
no, but yeah, what do you think?
I think that especially if you're going to reinstitute GM mode, having as many match types as you can available to play with to avoid monotony, because if I only have 8 match types to play with in GM mode, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
But if I've got Hell in a Cell, and I've got Championship Scramble, and I've got the special referee and last man standing and table matches and all of that I can play with, it's going to give more depth to the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, something that if they reinstitute the match that I would like to see, which I don't think was ever a consistent thing or even a thing at all, I think that regardless of who you use, the game should superimpose a referee shirt on them. Because I know there were a lot of the games where if you did like a created wrestler and you threw them in there, they'd just be in their attire, and it's like, okay, whatever, cool. But I just think that that's a small detail. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I don't know if you ever played, what was it called? Fire Pro Wrestling World?
No.
So one very neat feature is that you could actually create a referee. You could design them to however you want them, and you can actually you can actually make a lot of very accurate creations, like an Earl Hebner or a Charles Robinson or whatever. So I think if you're bringing it back, you might as well go the full 9 yards and have a create a referee mode, where let's say if I pick a Steve Austin to be a referee, do I want the referee shirt sleeves to be cut? Maybe he comes out in a custom referee shirt. Just again, ways of having options, and not just having it be linear or tunnel vision like.
I agree.
So another one here. Again, this one is very vague. It just says career mode. Career mode. We've talked about this before. If it comes back, I'm okay with it. However, I don't want it to be new superstar on the block, coming from an indie promotion, going to NXT, trying to impress Matt Bloom, getting a tryout match. It's like we've seen that for 4 or 5 years straight in a row at this point, and it's kind of like, okay, I understand. I'm going to quickly bring this back up again. I know last time that I brought up the Road to Championship mode, or you can't really call it that, but because I stated that you would basically start off as champion, and then depending on what decision you make, the computer makes its own decision. So, for example, you're WWE champion. Someone like a Buddy Murphy comes up to you and goes, I think I deserve a shot at that title. You have 2 options. If you accept, now you're in a feud with Buddy Murphy. If you reject, he either accepts that he's not worthy, or he tries to get your attention by attacking you, or beating you up, or I don't know, doing something, running your car over, or something like that. So essentially having AI sort of stepping up its intelligence by going off of what decisions you make. So that's just an idea that I have for a career mode if it comes back. So what do you think?
I believe that if we've talked about this one almost ad nauseum at this point. If it comes back, I'd like, again, for it to have the branching story modes, where it's not just one generically linear story. As far as content goes, I think what would be cool, which I just thought of while you were talking, was that would be if there is a specific story, and it doesn't have to be the new up and comer. It can again be select whoever you want and play through the story or something.
Yeah.
But if they made a carryover story kind of thing, now obviously It was kind of an end of the road story last year where we followed their career and they were getting inducted into the Hall of Fame already.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be cool if you had that option of continuing the story from the previous year's game.
Yeah.
So then you go from where the 19 story left off to where the 20 story begins, and you can recreate a new person who fills in the void of that character still.
Yeah.
Or you can strive to make them look like the same person. But I think it'd be fun if you have, over the course of several years, a story arc that follows one person.
Yeah. Yeah, which is essentially what the season mode back in the day was, is that when you would complete a full calendar year, it wouldn't just reset. You would continue. Now, granted, it would kind of get to the point where you would fall into a storyline, and then they would be like, oh yeah, I remember playing this storyline. But again, there was enough in there where you would still continue playing because it was so fun. There was something in it that just gave it replay value. So, yeah, and the thing is that they still do that now where you can, so for example, in 2K19, I tried this out the other time. So, when you are Buzz and you complete the story mode, you can continue playing, but it's generic matches. There's really no cutscenes, there is no direction in the story. You're just playing these random matches and having random title defenses. That's it.
Yeah.
So I would like for in all honesty, I would rather that they have something that's more of a season mode than a career mode at this point.
Yeah.
Second to last thing here, it says ratings. Ratings, I'm guessing this is in regards to what the overall of each superstar.
Probably. It's probably superstar ratings.
Yeah.
Because I think, for example, I don't remember where everybody was, but Becky and Ronda were really high this past year, but then you had people who were 25 points lower, and it's well, that's not exactly fair.
Sasha Banks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Again, is 2K I think has a philosophy of just going along with tradition, going along with status quo. So, for example, let's say if somewhere down the line you wanted to alter overall ratings, you would have to get the was it the accelerator? I forget.
I believe it was the accelerator. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to get that in order to adjust the overalls, which I thought was BS. I'm like, let us make our WWE roster the way that we want to make it. I get it. The first few games, it's like, oh, if you want to change the overall, you have to buy the accelerator. And okay, that's fine. But at this point, it's been 5 years since you've been doing that. It's like you can get a cash grab by doing something else and not sticking to the same formula time after time. Yeah, but going back to your point, it's so weird how a lot of these top contenders would trickle down. For example, I can remember Undertaker, Ministry Undertaker back in WWE 13 was a 96. Highest rated overall, and rightfully so. I mean, it's freaking Undertaker. And then you go to 2K19 and 2K20 where he's down to 88, 89. And in my mind, it's like, how the Undertaker at this point in time needs to be 90 or above. Anything lower is a crime.
Yeah. I don't care. I don't care that he's old now. He there sort of needs to be a legacy factor that plays into these ratings.
Yeah, and I mean, I know for a fact that and again, here we go. I'm gonna refer to it one more time. If we do the superstar attires as opposed to Undertaker 99, Undertaker 2000, Undertaker 2001. If you have it in just one slot, I wouldn't mind if each model of Undertaker was a different rating, but still relatively close. So, for example, you would have Undertaker 1990 at an 89 because he was just starting off his career. And then maybe by the time you get to Undertaker 2000, you have a 91 or a 92. And then current day Undertaker would be like a 93 or a 94. Just to kind of, go along with where he was in his career at the time.
Yeah.
Because, like the whole thing that they did with Sasha Banks, it's like, how does that work? I don't understand how does that happen? Because what was her? Was she like a 75 in one of her models?
I think so.
Yeah, and then like the other models were like 2 points lower or higher. Either give them believable ratings or allow for the player to customize their own roster. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think that it feels weird to have your top stars be above 90 and then have some of your lower stars sitting at 74. So I would almost rather that nobody ever drop below 80.
Yeah.
Like I know that sounds weird, but like even if you take the range and you go from 99 to 80, and 99 is like your whoever the hell the face of your company is at that moment, or whatever, you guys make the choice.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody should be below 80 because it feels to me like it's off.
Yeah, and also where that begins to play a big role is that the overall rating determines the durability of the superstar. So
Yeah.
if you're very low, then if someone hits 2 body slams on you, your body is already yellow. As opposed to if you're like a 95, that person's got to hit you with a whole bunch of moves in order for your body to start getting yellow.
Yeah, I should be able to some degree, and I know that kind of breaks the thing of realism. But like, let's hypothetically say Tyler Breeze is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Yeah.
I should be able to stand a chance against a Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
As the player.
Yeah.
Which is why I think closing that gap or making sure that there's essentially there's a reverse cap where you can't be lower than an amount. Will just keep that gap smaller in terms of who can stand up to who effectively.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this for just 1 second. I know that when I was playing WWE 13 online, there was always an option of fair play. So this would insinuate that if somebody has modified Brock Lesnar on their own personal roster, that those setting changes would not carry over. So you would get the default settings of whatever the game had. Which I think, once again, that's a neat option. If there's one day where you want to play with the rating that you've set, you could do that. Or if you want to go, you know what, let's stick to the original rating, you can quickly turn on that fair play option. And then boom, there you are. You can play as the rating that was set default in the game. Last thing that we have here, and actually a very neat feature if we were to get it, is custom signage. This is
where you can design your own sign. That'd be neat.
Yeah.
I'm down with that.
I think that's a pretty cool feature. One that actually we've never ever seen. So that's kind of like a first time thing in the series, which would be a really good eye catcher and also a good customization option. I wouldn't also mind if, for example, much like how you would be able to do face scans or picture uploads, if you can take a picture and upload it to like a poster on a poster, and then a fan, every time when they raise up that poster, that picture comes up. So just, yeah, I think customization options at its best. But what do you think?
I mean, you could even go as basic as just you give me a blank square, and you let me choose what color I want it to be, which is the color of my poster board, and then I can choose letters and rotate them, or I can handwrite even with the what the hell are they called? The thumb buttons.
The thumbsticks?
Yeah, the thumbsticks.
Yeah.
Or I can write using that, and it gives that sort of handwritten feel to it. Or I can stamp a photo on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a that sounds like a pretty easy creation suite to put in there. And now that we're talking about it, I'm surprised it hasn't been a thing, because I used to get tired of picking the same three. The My Hero poster was always just one of my defaults, because I'm like, okay, whatever.
I always liked the one where it said "I'm in HD." Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like there is a decent amount of signs to select, but most of these have been carried over since 10 years ago, like the My Hero and Best Pay-Per-View Ever and You're Number One and Hi Mom, like so many things where it's like, okay, we've seen this for so long that I wouldn't mind if, much like custom logos, like when you're in a Create a Superstar for custom logos, you talked about last time putting four pumpkins together and having that be a single image. I wouldn't mind if you basically had that same feature for these custom posters, where you could go, you could put images together, or you can upload a picture, or maybe there's like a paint mode where you can go and you can draw things and you can um, put shapes and things together, make patterns, and just have it be customizable. Um,
Yeah, because as far as I'm concerned, like the majority of the signs are still like old superstar signs, and I don't want to pick a road dog sign to represent my person.
yeah. I was also even thinking one small side thing that I think would be neat is that if you were to be able to customize your audience, like, what kind of audience do you want? Do you want little kids? Do you want adults? Maybe even having some settings of what they're wearing or from what generation they're wearing their apparel in. Um, just again, like if you're ever doing like a create an arena where you have more customization options to make it your own as
Yeah,
opposed to having, default crowd from a Raw or a SmackDown or whatever.
yeah, you get to set it to like a 1990s crowd or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, we just burned through the next 15 items. But any final remarks, Dan, or any final sentiments from everything that we've talked about today? What do you think for you personally holds the highest value? What would you want to see in the game, like as a priority above everything else?
I would say that the two that kind of stand out to me are mostly probably the more female wrestlers,
Okay.
and then the potential implementation of a revamped creation suite or a more involved creation suite. Because I know we've talked about all these things, and like the sign thing now, that's an interesting concept. I would love for them to integrate. But then I also want to see more of my favorite female wrestlers from then, now, and forever put into the game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I want to say that anything that involves Creation Suite would be at the top of my list. But again, the reason why all the predecessors to 2K15 succeeded so well is because how many, like the influx of features that it had. Um, your creation suites, your story modes, your upload, download sections, options, everything was just so jam packed. Nothing was restricted, nothing was off limits. Um, and for last gen games, I think that it did so much. Even some of them surpassed new gen games, and I think it's because of all the options that we had. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. More female talent, creation suite, make it more in depth. Let us customize facial hair and makeup and everything in between. Um, yeah, and I don't know about you, Dan. I mean, on a personal note, um, do you think that maybe somewhere you're getting a little excited? I mean, because to me, it's like this Patrick Gilmore guy, who's the executive producer, seems like he's on the pulse right now of what to do and what the fans want. Do you find yourself maybe getting just a bit excited and thinking, you know what, maybe this next game might be it. It might be the game that we've been wanting throughout this 5 year drought. What do you think? Is there any part of you that's maybe a bit excited, or are you still like, no, I need to see it before I hold my breath for anything?
I'm definitely a little bit of both, because the more that like we get to delve into these ideas, and obviously still some of this is us fantasy booking these off of these details that have come out, but then they have the same option. The fact that these major features that we've been talking about since we did Road to 2K20. There's a certain level of excitement in that.
Yeah.
However, there's also a lot of reluctance based on this year's entry, where you're like, oh well, I'm excited for all the what could be.
Yeah.
However, I need to wait to see the what is.
Right. Yeah. Very well said. Yeah. I won't lie. I've gone a little bit excited just because if this Patrick Gilmore guy is willing to share what the top wanted things are from all the lists that they've compiled, it seems promising, because that's not something that is 2K-esque, or would be something that they would
Yeah, it's a
ever
little
do.
out of character.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we finally caught lightning in a bottle by having this guy come in, but we'll just have to see. But I want to be a little bit hopeful, but not to the point where I'm putting out all these expectations, and then come 2021, it's like, oh, we didn't really get what we were hoping to get. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But with all this said and done, once again, we went through the next 15, and this is actually a side series that we're doing. The next time that we have the opportunity to, we're going to cover the next 10 or the next 15. So make sure that you join us again for those. And on behalf of Dan the Man and myself, we hope that everybody is doing well during these hard times, during this pandemic. Hope that everybody is staying home and staying safe. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And always remember, whenever you're in doubt, just turn down the treble
And crank up the bass.
We'll touch base with you guys next time.